My mother and my sister are famously saintly white lotuses. They constantly talk about being magnanimous and not holding grudges, until my father brought home his 4-year-old illegitimate son, saying he wanted the boy to be recognized by the family. I firmly opposed it and drove the illegitimate child out of the house. My mother and sister accused me of being malicious, saying I was picking on a child, and promptly sent the illegitimate child abroad for a proper upbringing. When the impoverished college student my sister sponsored started an affair with my brother-in-law, I was the first to step in and drive the other woman away, but my sister calmly said, "Life is a journey of cultivation. Since fate has brought her into my life, she must be here to test me." The impoverished student resented me for blocking her opportunity and staged a traffic accident to kill me. I never expected that my mom and my sister would actually say at my grave, "See, what goes around comes around. This is the fate of those who do nothing but evil. Karma's a bitch." Well, damn, after all that, I was the one who stood up for them, and I was still the one they mocked. Given a second chance, my dad brings his illegitimate son home. Whoever wants to be that stupid scapegoat can go right ahead. Tanghua, I brought back a child. My father, Zhang Yingzi, stood in the living room holding a little boy about 4 years old. Zhang Yingzi looked at the little boy with a loving expression, occasionally stroking his hair. Seeing my mother and me come downstairs, he said proudly, "Tanghua, from today on, Hao will be staying in our home. You must treat him as your own son, understand?" Zhang Yingzi's voice was not loud, but it carried an unquestionable authority. I looked around at the familiar scene and the familiar conversation, feeling dazed for a moment before realizing I had been reborn. This was the moment when my father brought his illegitimate son home. Truly, heaven has eyes. My hundreds of rebirth novels were not read in vain. I know full well that this life's opportunities must be seized. Even without the means or high intelligence to exact revenge for the previous life, I must stay far, far away. The painful lessons from my past life are still vivid in my mind. Ensuring my own safety is the first and foremost rule. The day my father brought his illegitimate son home, I was the first to lose my temper. Even before my mother did, every word he uttered was met with my thunderous retorts. While he was away on a business trip, I took the opportunity to send the illegitimate child to a special education school at great expense. The location was known to no one, and despite my father's prolonged search, he found no trace. I resolved this major trouble with lightning speed. My mother, Zhou Tanghua, and my sister, Zhang Ling, wore expressions of pity. After all, the child is pitiable. Barely 5 years old, what does it matter if he's illegitimate? Our family can certainly afford to raise him. If we bring him up by my side from such a young age, he'll surely come to see me as his own mother when he grows up. Zhang Ling chimed in with my mother, singing the same tune. Yes, after all, he shares half of Dad's blood. In the end, he's my own brother. Who knows where Minmin sent him off to? How heartless. What a sin, what a sin. Then they abruptly shifted their tone, their words dripping with accusations aimed at me. Zhang Minmin, your sister and I spend our days fasting and chanting Buddhist scriptures, yet you are so cruel and ruthless. You don't even seem like my own flesh and blood. I never imagined you could be so merciless toward a child. Do you have any idea how pitiful it is for a young child to be torn away from his family's embrace? A child of that age needs security more than anything. If he's thirsty or hungry, there's no one to care for him. Can you really feel no guilt at all? I was just about to explain something when Zhang Ling interrupted me. Minmin, don't say anything more. What's done is done. Mom and I will go to the temple in the mountains and copy Buddhist scriptures for a month to atone for your sins, but deep down, I feel the karma you carry is far too heavy to atone for my sins. I was left speechless. In the end, my mother secretly sent the illegitimate child abroad for education, all behind my back. I was both furious and enraged. From childhood, Zhou Tanghua and Zhang Ling have been known far and wide for their bodhisattva-like hearts. Everyone around them says that the mother and daughter of the Zhang family are extremely gentle and charitable in their dealings, never competing or fighting for anything. They are sure to be rewarded with good fortune. Unlike the younger daughter, that is, me, they always have the phrase, life is a practice. Once you let go and see through it, it becomes a different world, on their lips. I deeply empathize with my mother regarding my father bringing his illegitimate child home. I don't think she should suffer this injustice. I strongly urged her to stand up and defend her rights as the legitimate wife. She disagreed, saying that since she married my father, she must accept all his flaws, including his child from outside. I only thought she was simply kind-hearted, so I always stood up for her, rushing to solve her troubles first. She got to be the good person. And she and her sister enjoyed the good reputation, I became the villain, and I bore the blame. In the end, it was also because of my sister and brother-in-law's affairs that I was hired and killed by a mistress, yet they stood before my grave, mocking me with an air of worldly detachment. See, Lingling, I told you your sister was always stirring up trouble, fighting with this one and that one. It never ends well, heaven sees all. Those who do too much evil will always face retribution. I was such a fool, acting as their shield. In the end, the bullet that wounded me the deepest was fired by their own hands. In this life, I have learned to keep my mouth shut. I'll just be a quail with its neck tucked in, and see how you all sort this out yourselves. Zhou Tenghua was momentarily stunned, looking at the father and son who were as close as can be. Unable to find words, she carefully examined the boy's features, repeatedly searching for similar traces on my father's face. After a long while, she finally murmured to herself, "Alike, truly alike." Her figure swayed unsteadily for a moment, and she suddenly felt a bit unsteady on her feet. She took 2 steps back and abruptly sank onto the sofa, letting out a dull thud. Seeing my mother in this state, my father grew displeased. "What are you standing there for? How could I not know if he's my son? Who are you to question it? His mother, Erzian, passed away not long ago due to illness. I can't let my son drift around with nowhere to go. So, starting today, How is part of our family. You must treat him as your own son." The How my father mentioned was the son of his youthful white moonlight, Jiang Erzian, because my grandmother didn't like her and firmly opposed my father marrying Jiang Erzian. That's how my mother came into the picture later. Who would have thought Jiang Erzian was just as stubborn? After leaving my father, she never married for the rest of her life. My father had never been able to forget her, and a few years ago, when they happened to meet again, he couldn't resist getting involved with her once more. Naturally, a little bastard was born. Jiang Erzian's existence has always been a thorn in my mother's heart. Although she was the daughter-in-law hand-picked by my grandmother, she never truly won my father's heart. Faced with my mother's helplessness, my father appeared confident and determined, knowing that no matter what he did, my mother would inevitably compromise. "Tenghua, Zhou Tenghua, I'm talking to you. Did you hear me? If you have any objections, just say it outright. Don't make me guess." "I don't have the time for that." My mother lowered her gaze. Without a word, her hands clasped together, trembling violently, her nails almost digging into her flesh, yet she still forced herself to maintain a composed and dignified posture. My father had already raised his voice right in her face, yet she remained unmoved. "In my past life, I didn't understand, but now I do, because over the years, my father has praised my mother most for her indifferent temperament. Years of vegetarianism and Buddhist devotion have left my mother perpetually enveloped in a faint scent of incense. She treats people and matters with a light touch, without the slightest desire to compete. This is the biggest difference between Zhou Tenghua and Jiang Erzian. It's something Jiang Erzian lacks. Whenever something needs to be fought for, there's always this daughter of hers to do it for her. All she has to do is step in after the benefits are secured, give me a light reprimand, and spout some lofty platitudes about life and death. You can easily win everyone's praise." My mother remained silent, while my father's every word struck a painful chord. "Erzian has had a tough life. She never married for my sake, wasting her best years. She's so beautiful and highly educated. How could she be so devoted to me?" My father spoke with regret, but in his heart, he was secretly overjoyed. "I have let Erzian down in this lifetime. She risked being an older mother to give me a son, and before I could properly repay her, she passed away from illness. This is my, Zhang Yingzi's, only son, and the sole heir of our Zhang family. I want to make up for all my regrets with Erzian through How." My father went on speaking to himself. When he said, "the sole heir," I felt no ripple of emotion at all. He can say what he wants, but when the time comes, the law won't let me walk away without a single share of the family assets. My mother, however, had long since reddened her eyes, biting her lower lip so hard it seemed she might draw blood, yet the corners of her mouth still had to maintain the curve of a smile. My father glanced at my mother indifferently. "Tenghua, I hope you can be fair and generous, and take good care of my child with Erzian. Go and tidy up a children's room right away. Bedding, supplies, clothes, everything must be brand new, and buy only the best." My mother glanced at me sitting to the side. Her eyes were filled with anticipation and hints. I nonchalantly played on my phone, opening up Honor of Kings and diving right in. If this had happened before, with my temperament, I would never have been able to endure my father's endless chattering for so long. I would have flipped the table over long ago. In my previous life, I not only cursed my father until he didn't even recognize his own home, but I also grabbed that little bastard and threw him out. Although I got slapped a few times by my father back then, I didn't care at all. I stood in front of my mother like a lion with its fur bristling. I once believed my mother was the most pitiful and helpless woman in the world, bullied by her own husband without the ability to fight back, and as my mother's best daughter, I must protect my own mother. I want to let my mother know that in this world, a daughter is much more useful than a husband, but now it's impossible. My mother is in her 40s, and she has lived more days than I have eaten meals. She can definitely handle it well. Seeing my eyes glued to my phone, a flicker of surprise flashed in my mother's gaze. Good, let her be surprised. She had long grown accustomed to me being her sharp sword, but today that sword had been unsheathed and rendered useless, because my mother always turned her gaze toward me, seeking my help. My father followed her line of sight and spoke up. Tanghua, why do you keep looking at Minmin whenever I talk to you? At that moment, I put down my phone and met my dad's gaze, while my mom secretly rejoiced inside. She knew my fighting spirit all too well. Ever since I was little, everyone was afraid of Dad. Except for me, I challenged everything and everyone, never once losing a battle, a record that speaks for itself. My mom proudly lifted her chin a little higher. As soon as I start the fight, she can gracefully retreat behind me. She just sits back and waits for the war to end, then steps out to say a few fair words, but unfortunately, her wish is about to be dashed. I directly reached out and took the child from my father's arms, holding him close and kissing him over and over. Little Hao Hao. Our precious little one, Dad. I don't know if it's because of our blood connection, but I liked Hao Hao the moment I saw him. Ever since I was little, I've always wished for a younger brother. Now that you've had a son later in life, I will definitely love and protect him twice as much. Don't worry, Dad. Hearing this, my father immediately beamed with joy. That's wonderful, Minmin. You truly are my good daughter. This is how it should be. You are siblings, and it's only right that you love and care for each other. I smiled brightly. Of course, Dad, not only me, but Mom will also cherish him dearly. Isn't that right, Mom? Seeing that I wasn't helping her and was instead putting her on the spot, my mom completely lost her composure. She grabbed my hand, her lips trembling uncontrollably, her voice choked with tears as she said, Minmin, are you still my daughter? How could you say such things? Isn't this like stabbing me right in the heart? I frowned, subtly pulling my arm away, and said to her, Mom, what do you mean by such things? You're a grown adult. Can't you be a little more mature? Hao Hao is only 4 years old. He's Dad's son and my brother. Why does it feel like you don't want him to stay at all? Besides, haven't you always said you regretted not giving Dad a son? Now is your chance to make up for it. Zhang Ling had also returned home by this time. Before I could even get a few words out, he immediately made his stance clear. Mom, the fact that Dad can still have a son at his age shows it's all arranged by heaven, a gift of this lovely child to us. You should accept it with grace. My mother's face instantly turned as pale as paper, drained of all color. The veins at her temples throbbed with each breath. My father nodded repeatedly, showering praise on us two sisters. That's more like a daughter of the Zhang family. Well done, especially Minmin. You used to be like a little hedgehog, but it seems you've grown up. Dad is very pleased. I smiled, took Hao Hao by the hand, and walked away with a flourish. Come on, I'll take you to buy some candy. This time, I didn't help out, and on top of that, my sister was more than happy to watch the drama unfold. I'm curious to see how my ever-tolerant mother will willingly take care of the little illegitimate child. The little bastard naturally stayed in the house. Within just a few days, the house was thrown into chaos. Though only 4 years old, the little bastard was rotten to the core. Not only did he enjoy torturing and killing small animals, but he also frequently bullied, beat, and cursed the housekeeper, and he's particularly good at pretending. Whenever my dad is home, he behaves perfectly, but the moment my dad steps out, his true nature comes out. We went through one nanny after another. Zhang Yingzi was worried that hired help wouldn't take good enough care, so he asked my mom to look after him personally. As soon as I got home for the holidays, I hid in my room and refused to come out, letting him turn the house upside down. My mother, who had always lived a peaceful life, quickly couldn't take it anymore. At first, she could still comfort herself. Boys will be boys. It's normal for them to be a bit mischievous. Being lively is good, it means they're smart. But when that little bastard smashed my mom's favorite prayer beads into pieces, she finally lost her temper. Looking at the beads scattered all over the floor, smashed into powder by the little bastard with a hammer, my mother couldn't hold back and slapped the little bastard a few times. The little bastard, caught off guard by the beating, fell and hit his head on the corner of the table. instantly causing blood to gush out. I didn't dare delay, quickly called my dad, and took the little bastard to the hospital. Zhang Yingzi and Zhang Ling arrived at the hospital almost at the same time. As soon as I entered the ward, I saw the little bastard's forehead already bandaged, wrapped in thick gauze. The little bastard saw my dad and burst into tears. My dad held him in his arms, heartbroken. "My son, how long was I away from home for you to end up like this?" My mom stood by helplessly, and for a moment, the ward fell into a deathly silence. The little bastard cried for quite a while, and my dad patiently comforted him the whole time. My dad remembered he had a bone to pick and turned to look at my mom. "Tanghua, how did you look after the child? How could he possibly hit his head like this when everything was fine?" My mom stammered. "I only gave him a light push. Who knew he wouldn't keep his balance and fall on his own?" My dad looked at her with disdain. "Do you think I'm as easy to fool as a 3-year-old? If you have any grievances, take them out on me. What kind of person bullies a 5-year-old child? You always chant Amitabha Buddha every day, but I never expected you to be so vicious. You can't even handle such a small task properly. I really don't know what you're good for." My father scolded my mother in front of so many people, and she felt utterly humiliated. It was as if all the life had been drained from her, leaving only a stiff shell standing there. Normally, at this moment, it would be my turn to step in, and I would definitely bring up how that little bastard broke mom's prayer beads, but now, I broke the awkward silence and tried to console him, saying, "Oh, Dad, don't be angry. When raising kids, bumps and scrapes are inevitable. My sister and I are all grown up now, and Mom hasn't taken care of a little one in years. It's only natural she's a bit out of practice. Besides, how isn't Mom's biological child after all? Since he suddenly came into our family, we should give Mom some time to adjust. They say being a stepmother is difficult, and not without reason." My words hit my father right in the heart. He would surely think that it was precisely because How wasn't his own child that she could be so heavy-handed from the very beginning. He had never fully trusted Zhou Tanghua to genuinely care for his son. Zhou Ling chimed in from the side. "Mom, you too. It's just a string of prayer beads. How is still a child. It's no big deal if he accidentally broke it. How could you be so harsh?" The moment Zhang Ling spoke, I realized there was a timid little girl with her. She was standing at the doorway of the ward, craning her neck to peek inside. I recognized her immediately. It was Lin Xiaoya, the impoverished student Zhang Ling had sponsored from high school all the way through college graduation. Zhang Ling took her everywhere. And as soon as Lin Xiaoya graduated, she was directly arranged to work as an assistant in her fiancé's company. I repeatedly reminded her that the donor and the recipient must maintain their distance, but Zhang Ling dismissed it with disdain. Later, I accidentally witnessed my future brother-in-law and Lin Xiaoya openly kissing on the street. I subtly hinted to Zhang Ling to be wary of the two. She still brushed it off as if it were nothing, even laughing and saying that the way I see others reflects what kind of person I am. Though I was angry, my sense of justice was overwhelming, and I couldn't stand by and let my own sister be made a fool of. I used every means at my disposal, both fair and foul, to force Lin Xiaoya to back down. Little did I expect that Lin Xiaoya would harbor a grudge for the wealthy life she was about to secure, which I had thwarted. She actually hired someone to tamper with my brake pads and arranged for a vehicle to deliberately collide with me, causing me to die a tragic death on the highway. In the end, all I got was Zhang Ling's dismissive remark, "One should be forgiving where possible. Xiaoya is still young and new to society. Making mistakes is inevitable. Besides, her falling for my fiancé just proves I have good taste in men." This time, Minmin went too far. Seeing Zhang Ling still treating Lin Xiaoya as her best friend at this moment makes me find it amusing. This time, I'm definitely keeping my mouth tightly shut. My father glared fiercely at my mother. What a hypocrite, a wolf in sheep's clothing. My mother's face kept changing colors. I bet her lungs were about to explode, but she couldn't say a word. After answering a phone call, my father's assistant respectfully said to him, "Chairman, you have a very important meeting in half an hour. Would you like me to cancel it for you?" My father thought for a moment and said, "No need to cancel, proceed as usual." Before leaving, my father looked down at Zhou Tanghua and admonished him, "Tanghua, you're a grown man now. You should know better. The child is innocent, so we'll let it slide this time. I hope you won't disappoint me again. The child is innocent." The same words, but this time they came from my father's mouth. Yet, no matter how my mother heard it, she couldn't help but feel a strange discomfort. After my father left, my mother pretended to be heartbroken, hoping for my comfort. "Minmin, you're such a silly child. Do you know what kind of consequences it would have for this child to stay in our family? I played dumb. What consequences? My mother looked at me with exasperation. You and your sister are both girls, and sooner or later you'll marry out. Now, out of nowhere, a son appears, and your father treats him like the apple of his eye. In the future, will there still be any share of the family property left for the two of you? Besides, this child is more violent and irritable than a normal 5-year-old. I looked it up online, and they say it might be supermale syndrome, a genetic disorder. It can be terrifying when they grow up. I mimicked her usual condescending tone. Mom, he's just a child. What does he know? He's only 4 years old. I know you resent Aunt Jiang, but you can't take all your hatred out on Hao. Even if he has a condition, with our family's resources, we can certainly afford to raise him. Even 10 of them would be more than manageable. Besides, since he's still young, if you raise him by your side, he'll definitely grow close to you and see you as his real mother. In my past life, I used the excuse that the little bastard had a violent disorder to send him to a special education school, telling everyone it was for treatment, but in reality, it was just house arrest. My mother saw that I was unreliable, and my sister was even worse. To some extent, she was even more of a saint than my mother. A knife never feels the pain until it's stabbed into your own flesh. There was no other way. My mom had to figure it out on her own. However, there was only one solution she could think of, that was to call upon her mother-in-law. After all, she was the daughter-in-law my grandmother was absolutely delighted with. Unfortunately, she miscalculated one thing. Grandma just didn't like Jiang Erjun, but she never said she didn't like her own biological grandson. In my mother's imagination, the course of events should have been inviting Grandma back to take charge, scolding my father severely, standing up for my mother, not only refusing to acknowledge the little bastard's identity but also driving him out of the house. My mom can once again gracefully fade into the background. On the day Grandma arrived, I went to pick her up myself. As soon as I saw Grandma, I put on a pained expression and said, "Grandma, I don't know what's gotten into Mom lately. She insists on calling you over for the smallest things." Grandma was still completely clueless at that moment, having no idea what was going on. I just got a call from my mom, who cried for a long time saying something big had happened at home, but she couldn't get to the point and kept urging Grandma to come over. Grandma thought something had happened to her son. As soon as we got home, before I could even take a sip of water, my mom started tearfully recounting what had happened over the past few days. Unexpectedly, after Grandma saw Hao, her expression completely changed. I could tell from her eyes that she genuinely adored this eldest grandson. Only my mother kept insisting that Grandma should stand up for her. Grandma said coldly, "Tanghua, so it's just this little matter. I thought something had happened to my son. What if you gave this old lady a heart attack, and how exactly do you expect me to stand up for you?" My mother naturally refused to speak up on her own. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stubbornly stared at Grandma. Grandma snorted with a laugh. "Tanghua, this is where you're wrong. Hao is my own grandson. It's just not right for him to be left out there. Since his mother is no longer in this world, why are you being so particular about it?" My mom was completely stunned. This was nothing like what she had imagined. "Mom, didn't you hate Jiang Erjun?" Grandma frowned and calmly said, "Jiang Erjun is Jiang Erjun, and my eldest grandson is my eldest grandson. They're two different matters. You've been in this family for so many years and only gave birth to 2 daughters. As the daughter-in-law of our Zhang family, since you can't bear a son anymore, it's your duty to raise Hao properly. If you have any ill intentions, this old woman, will be the first to object." My mother's face turned even uglier. Great, not only did she fail to get rid of the little bastard, but now the little bastard has gained a powerful ally. Not only that, Grandma also used the excuse of wanting to be closer to her eldest grandson and decided not to leave, planning to stay here permanently. I was beside myself, desperately trying to hold back my laughter. Talk about trying to steal a chicken only to end up losing the rice. I secretly called my dad and gave him a heavily embellished account of how my mom had brought Grandma into the matter to make a decision. Now Grandma was so furious she was dizzy and her heart was racing. My father's anger only grew upon hearing this, and he stormed back home in a rage. He looked at my mother with deep disappointment and said, "I never knew you could be so cunning. My mother is in poor health. If you cause her to fall ill, how will you ever make up for it? Enough. If taking care of my son is truly such a burden for you, I won't force you. There are plenty of people eager to be Hao's mother. We'll go file for divorce tomorrow, and you won't have to stir up trouble here anymore, keeping a woman like you in the house. I'm very worried about my son's safety." My mother never expected him to be so heartless. That he would actually divorce his own wife so easily for the sake of this illegitimate child. She opened her mouth to speak, but her throat felt as if it were stuffed with cotton, making it difficult to utter a sound. Compared to the plot of my previous life, the direction this time is completely different. No matter how much my mother tried to persuade him, it was useless. My father was determined to divorce her. She had no choice but to grit her teeth and refuse to sign, dragging it out as long as possible. During that time, she kept putting on a pitiful act in front of me. Minmin, please help your mom. Your dad is so heartless. I've been with him for over 20 years, and he just wants to divorce me like that. He really doesn't take me seriously at all. For the sake of that little bastard, he's such a fool. I was completely absorbed in my game, casually brushing it off. That's between you adults. How would a kid like me understand? She suddenly broke down emotionally, pulling at her hair frantically. Do you have to drive me to my death to be happy? I'm your mother, not your enemy. You really are just like your father. A cold-hearted, heartless bastard. I almost laughed out loud when I heard that. Mom, I'm just following your teachings. Everything is the best arrangement from heaven. Life is a practice, and these are all tests given to you by fate. My mother didn't expect me to say that. After a long pause, her eyes turned sinister as she slowly spoke. Zhang Minmin, are you here to disgust me? Everyone says daughters are closest to their mothers, always able to empathize with them, but it seems that saying isn't true at all. My daughter isn't on the same page as her mother. I truly feel heartbroken. I've raised you for so many years, and in the end, you don't wish me well. Do you think I really can't leave this family? If it weren't for you and your sister, I would have left long ago. I laughed. So the saintly White Lotus has decided to stop being a saint. Everything is the best arrangement from heaven. Isn't that your favorite saying? Is this all it takes for you to throw in the towel? My mother was so furious she smashed her cup to pieces. I paid no attention and kept going. Zhou Tanghua, to have a family fall apart under your watch. I truly feel sorry for you. After all, she is my mother, and I still hope she can live well. I was just about to remind her to ask my dad for more money. I don't know if she was angered into foolishness by me, or if she truly didn't care at all. She ended up not asking for a single cent, leaving with nothing, probably thinking of maintaining a final shred of dignity, to make my dad feel guilty. Let her be. Anyway, she's been secretly saving up money behind my dad's back all these years, so if she spends a bit more frugally, it'll definitely be enough for the rest of her life. Just as things had settled down on my mom's side, something happened with Zhang Ling. She ran up to me, crying as if drenched by a spring rain. Minmin, your brother-in-law wants to break off our engagement, just like in my previous life. Lin Xiaoya, the female university student Zhang Ling had been supporting, had ultimately gotten involved with Gu Qing. She had paid no attention to my earlier warnings, and now that the situation was beyond repair, she was panicking. In the past, I would have been the first to charge forward and chase away the other woman. Now, just after sending off the big saint, here comes a little saint. I played dumb. Sis, didn't you say you were good friends with her? Zhang Ling said bitterly. I treated her like a good friend, funded her college education, covered all her living expenses, but she never saw me as a good friend at all. She even stole my fiancé. I smiled. Sis, you should look on the bright side. She comes from a poor family and has had a tough life since childhood. You're the kindest person. What does it matter if you just let her have your fiancé? Zhang Ling looked at me incredulously. Minmin, what are you talking about? I shrugged. It's all thanks to what you and Mom have taught me over the years. Haven't you always said that people should be kind and generous, and even when others make mistakes, we should try to see things from their perspective? I thought that girl has had enough of a hard life, and since my brother-in-law is in a good position, it's a decent match for her. Isn't that what you hoped for all these years you've been supporting her, to help her escape the shadow of her family? Sis, you've done a good deed, and it's a great merit. Zhang Ling stared at me as if I were a monster. Minmin, what's wrong with you today? Before, you were always warning me to be wary of that bitch. Now that it's actually happened, why are you suddenly taking her side? It's hilarious. She knows I've advised her before, and she still didn't listen, always thinking that when something goes wrong, I'll step up for her. I sighed helplessly. Maybe I'm just too narrow-minded, always thinking the worst of people, but now, I've secretly vowed to learn from you and Mom, to go with the flow and everything. Seeing that I had no intention of seeking justice for her, Zhang Ling left unwillingly. I bet she wouldn't let that scumbag couple live a good life. Sure enough, she came up with a plan that hurts the enemy 800 but costs herself 1,000. She stormed into Gu Cheng's company with a few close friends and started smashing everything. Coincidentally, Gu Cheng was in the conference room meeting with clients. Zhang Ling saw Lin Xiaoya sitting beside her, exchanging flirtatious glances with Gu Cheng, and instantly flew into a rage. Without a second thought, she stormed into the meeting room, grabbed Lin Xiaoya, and slapped her several times. "You little bitch, I've fed you, clothed you, and paid for your college education, and this is how you repay me, by seducing my husband. I'll teach you to be so shameless." Zhang Ling, along with her friends, dragged Lin Xiaoya by the hair and threw her to the ground. Lin Xiaoya was beaten without any ability to fight back, and could only curl up on the ground, screaming loudly, "Help, Mr. Gu, save me quickly." The client was utterly shocked, never expecting that just coming to sign a contract would lead to such a dramatic scene. Gu Cheng's face was terrifyingly dark as he repeatedly apologized to the client. Gu Cheng shouted, "Stop it right now, haven't you caused enough trouble?" "Zhang Ling, I told you to stop, did you hear me?" Zhang Ling, who was already in the heat of the fight, had no intention of stopping. She couldn't stop cursing. "I'll beat you to death, you seductress, go to hell, you bitch." Gu Cheng held Zhang Ling's arm tightly. "Zhang Ling, calm down." Zhang Ling violently shook off Gu Cheng's control, grabbed the ashtray from the conference table, and smashed it toward Gu Cheng's head. "Get lost, you're no good either." Gu Cheng staggered from the blow, clutching his forehead in pain as he sat on the ground, shouting, "Call the police. What are you all standing around for?" The terrified client was speechless. "And Mr. Gu, you deal with this first, we'll sign the contract another day." With that, he turned and left without looking back. Only then did the other employees in the company snap out of it. Some called for security, others dialed the police. Zhang Ling grabbed Lin Xiaoya, who was trying to flee, picked up a stool, and began smashing it wildly onto her body. "Homewrecker, shameless. Why didn't your parents drown you at birth?" For a moment, wails, curses, and the sounds of tearing and fighting all mingled together. Lin Xiaoya gradually lost the ability to make any sound. The incident was recorded by onlooking employees and posted online, quickly trending on social media. Gu Cheng was half dead with anger. He swore that Zhang Ling would pay the price. Police officers from the local station quickly arrived to control the situation, and with many hands helping, they sent Lin Xiaoya and Gu Cheng to the hospital. Gu Cheng's forehead was split open, requiring over a dozen stitches. Lin Xiaoya had it even worse. Her nose was broken, and she lost an eye. Several of her ribs were kicked and fractured. Her face was also disfigured, and Lin Xiaoya completely broke down in the hospital room. Gu Cheng didn't fare much better either. A glass ashtray struck his forehead, leaving a deep gash that required over a dozen stitches. The two of them gritted their teeth and swore they would make Zhang Ling face judgment. Gu Cheng immediately called a lawyer to start the lawsuit process. By the time my dad and I arrived, Zhang Ling and her friends had already been taken to the police station. Zhang Ling burst into tears when she saw us, crying, "Dad, please save me, that despicable couple is suing me, I don't want to go to jail." I stepped forward and said, "Sis, how could you hit someone? That's against the law. If they insist on pressing charges, what can Dad do about it? As the saying goes, it's better to tear down a temple than to break up a marriage. Since they are so well matched, you should let them be." My father looked at Zhang Ling with disappointment, as if she were a piece of iron that refused to become steel. "You've always been such a gentle and virtuous girl since you were little, how could you resort to such violence?" Zhang Ling burst into tears, her hatred for Lin Xiaoya making her grind her teeth. "That shameless pair of dogs, how dare they sneak into bed behind my back and steal my man? Am I not even allowed to slap her a few times? If they end up having some little bastard, I swear I'll kill them both." Zhang Ling grew more and more agitated, cursing them as "that pair of dogs" and "little bottoms" with every breath. My father's face turned so green it was unbearable to look at. The more I listened, the more I felt she was actually cursing me. My father grew even angrier, scolding, "You'd better reflect on yourself, I can't control you anymore." With that, he turned and left. Truly my father, so heartless. Now that he has a son, he can just abandon his daughter without a second thought. "Then you don't care, and I won't either." I followed suit and walked away, while Zhang Ling let out a desperate roar behind us. "Come back, you can't just leave me to die. I don't want to go to prison." Things had escalated to this point, and it was hard to turn back. Lin Xiaoya was assessed as having a level 6 disability, and Zhang Ling, as the mastermind, was sentenced to 10 years for intentional injury. The other girls were sentenced to 1 to 3 years in prison. I heard that Zhang Ling fainted in court. Upon hearing the verdict, in my past life, I took care of the mistress for her and was retaliated against. This time, it's her turn. My life gradually returned to peace, and it had been a long time since I last saw my mother. After she left, I would occasionally still hear news about her, but gradually, there was no news at all. In the blink of an eye, 2 years passed. After graduation, I smoothly entered my father's company for an internship. Starting from the grassroots assembly line, I familiarized myself with every position and rotation. Although my father had long since decided that the little bastard would be his future successor, he was still willing to nurture a daughter who worked hard, took things seriously, and was willing to put in the effort. When the little bastard grew up and took over the company, he even thought about having me support him from behind the scenes. When I rotated to the HR department, I casually glanced at the resumes that had been submitted to HR. This month, I then flipped through a few pages and was immediately stunned. Isn't that my saintly, White Lotus mother? She wants to work as a cleaner. How dare she submit a resume? Then again, after all these years of marriage to my dad, she's never once gotten involved in the company's affairs. She's never shown her face around here either, so it's perfectly normal that none of the employees, from top to bottom, recognize her. I called her from the Human Resources Department to invite her for an interview at the company. When we met again, there was a certain awkwardness. In just 2 short years, my mother's appearance had undergone a dramatic transformation. Once a well-maintained, ethereal noblewoman untouched by worldly concerns, her face was now etched with the weariness of life. I spoke with a detached tone. Mom, you can't handle cleaning work. You don't have any money left, do you? Her eyes suddenly reddened. Minmin, I don't know how to do anything, you know that. I looked at her calmly, and then, she suddenly pleaded, Minmin, please help me. I watched without speaking, her body trembling uncontrollably. After a long pause, she said in a quivering voice, Minmin, please put in a good word for me with your dad. I'm willing to get back together with him. I thought for a moment, how about you come back home? My mother's dull eyes instantly lit up. Really, Minmin, you're willing to help me, to let me come home? I nodded. Of course, no matter what, you're still my mom, but you'll need a reason to come back. Dad's been looking for a nanny for how recently. I'll hire you. My mother hesitated. Go back as a nanny. I analyzed it for her. First, you can earn some money. I'll pay you double the market rate for a nanny. Second, being close to the water gives you the advantage of the moon. By frequently appearing in front of my dad, reminding him of all the years you've been through together, he'll soon remember how good you were. My mother was overjoyed and agreed without a second thought, but she didn't know that my dad had already gone abroad yesterday and wouldn't be back for 3 months. At home, the parade of women my father brought back was endless. Just thinking about my mother's expression as she played the role of a maid at home filled me with excitement. As I had expected, my mother had to take care of the little bastard, who was at that age where even dogs would find him annoying, while also serving the stepmothers my father brought home. Whenever things didn't go his way, the little bastard would kick and hit my mother. At first, she would try to discipline him, but after being repeatedly scolded by my grandmother to remember her place, she stopped. My mother had to swallow her pride to keep her footing and avoid being driven out, but at the moment, this stepmother was not so easy to talk to. Upon learning that the new housekeeper at home was the ex-wife, she intensified her torment. Either the bird's nest soup was too cold, or the bathwater was too hot. It's either the dishes are too spicy or the soup is too salty. In short, she finds fault with everything. Fortunately, I moved out long ago, and even when I occasionally come back, I pretend not to see it. My stepmother, being as shrewd as she is, saw my attitude and had no qualms about it. Whenever my mom looks at me with pleading eyes, I immediately open my computer to deal with work. I specialize in playing dumb and acting clueless. I finally managed to hold out until my dad came home, but before my mom could even speak, my stepmother beat her to it. Playing the victim first, she threw herself into my dad's arms and cried for a long time, recounting how she and her little bastard had been abused by my mom over the past 3 months. My father knew she had come back to work as a nanny, but he never expected that during his absence, his 2 precious darlings would suffer so much injustice. My father glared at me, but I preemptively questioned Zhou Tanghua. Mom, how could you be so cruel? Back then, you begged me in tears to help you, and I agreed to let you return, hoping you could make up for your mistakes. I never imagined you would act one way in front of me and another behind my back. I've been busy with work all day, believing you would surely take good care of my brother and stepmother. You've let me down so much. I know you still hope to reconcile with my father, but your behavior makes me ashamed on your behalf. My father's face was so dark it could drip water. Still thinking about remarrying, maybe in the next life. My mother couldn't take it anymore. Her face flushed red with anger. Panting heavily, she turned and rushed into the kitchen, and I immediately sensed something was wrong. Based on my experience reading so many rebirth novels, Zhou Tenghua was likely to do something extreme in the heat of the moment. I quickly ran into the room. Just as I locked the door, I heard my stepmother scream, "Aw, help, someone's been killed." I opened the surveillance app to check the living room. My father was already lying on the floor, his hands clutching his neck, with a pair of scissors stuck in it. It must have hit a major artery. No matter how hard I tried to press, the blood wouldn't stop, gushing out in torrents. Stepmother was so terrified she scrambled out on all fours. Only my mother remained, standing there in a daze, muttering over and over, "You deserve this, you deserve it. You have no one to blame but yourself." In the end, Zhou Tenghua ended up in prison, reunited with Zhang Ling, while stepmother was too frightened to ever set foot in the house again. Although Zhang Yingza managed to survive, he was left completely incapacitated, lying motionless in his hospital bed. Everyone has received the ending they deserved. I almost forgot, there's one more. I called in the company's legal team and, on the grounds of suspecting that the little bastard wasn't my father's biological son, took him for a paternity test. The test results, without exception, showed no blood relation to my father. Upon hearing this conclusion, Grandma was the first to disagree. Holding her precious grandson tightly, she insisted, "Impossible, how is my own flesh and blood? The test results must be wrong." I shook my head with a smile. "Grandma, you're getting old. Now that Dad can't take charge, and Mom and Sister are in prison, I'm the only one holding this family together. Don't argue with me, what I say goes." I wanted to send the illegitimate child away, but Grandma firmly refused. With no other choice, I had to let Grandma take the little bastard back to the countryside, sending the child support on time every month, but on the condition that the little bastard has no inheritance rights. Grandma couldn't twist the arm of the powerful, so she was forced to agree. She took the little bastard and a sum of money, leaving far away, with all the troubles resolved. I could finally focus all my energy on the company's development. By the time Zhang Ling served his sentence and was released from prison, the world would already be a different place. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. My cousin was sweet-talked by her husband into believing that staying in a hotel was better than buying a house. She came to ask for my and my parents' opinions. We saw through her husband's little scheme and advised, buying a house is still better. Staying in a hotel or renting, isn't that just working to pay for someone else's mortgage? So, she and her husband took out a loan and bought a marital home. After they moved in, they called us for every little thing at home and even asked us to give them our school district spot. We refused, and afterwards, whenever their life didn't go as smoothly, they blamed us. Later, my brother-in-law had an affair. My cousin blamed us for suggesting they buy a house, saying it put too much pressure on her husband and led to his infidelity. She came to our house as a guest, drugged us, and while we were unconscious, set a fire that burned our entire family alive. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my cousin asked for our advice. "Uncle, cousin, these are gifts for you." Staring at my cousin's youthful, wrinkle-free face, I numbly took the red paper bag from her hands. "Bo Chow and I are getting married soon. My mom has been pushing him to buy a house, but he just started working a few years ago and doesn't have much savings. He's eager to marry me, but if we buy a house now, he'd have to borrow for the down payment, which would put a lot of pressure on him. Recently, many hotels have introduced long-stay discounts. Bo Chow says staying in a hotel is great, someone cleans for you, and the price is about the same as renting." Uncle, cousin, you've both studied a lot. What do you think? Should we buy a house or stay in a hotel? The paper bag fell to the floor. There must have been a jar inside, because it made a crisp, ringing sound as it hit the ceramic tiles. "Cousin, what's wrong? Don't you like the gift?" my cousin asked. No, I was just thinking, since we're family, there's no need to be so formal or bring gifts." I picked up the paper bag and shoved it into my cousin's hands, then pulled my dad toward the study. "This issue isn't exactly major, but it's not minor either. I need to discuss it with my dad." Just as my cousin finished asking, everything came rushing back to me in an instant. In my previous life, my cousin had come to ask us the same question, gifts in hand. At that time, the economic situation was constantly changing. although housing prices kept rising, voices predicting a drop were endless. Moreover, buying a house was a major decision. A single misstep could saddle someone with decades of debt. My dad and I discussed it for a long time, but still couldn't come to a conclusion. It was my mom who finally saw through my brother-in-law's little scheme. Buchow's family doesn't seem poor, so if he's unwilling to pay for a marital home, is he afraid it'll be shared with Jiayan? Young people these days have so many thoughts. Even before marriage, they're already calculating this and that, so we decided to suggest that my cousin and her fiancé buy a house. My aunt and uncle have always been indecisive, and since my father is a university professor, they took our suggestion as if it were a royal decree. They forced my brother-in-law to buy a house, threatening not to let my cousin marry him otherwise, and even pressured her to abort the baby she was carrying. My brother-in-law compromised and took out a loan to buy the house. After that, our family's nightmare began. Once the two of them moved in, they started calling me for every little thing that happened at home. The power went out today, and tomorrow the water heater broke. Cousin, it was you who suggested we buy a house back then, causing our family to take on a huge debt. Now, if anything happens to our family, you have to help. Out of guilt, I worked tirelessly without complaint. Later, they even set their sights on the school district spot attached to our house. They sold the deed to their house's school district for a large sum of money and wanted us to let them use our school district for free. Our school district had already been allocated to someone else, so we refused them. Ever since then, they have held a grudge against us. Whenever things go poorly for them, they blame it on us for advising them to buy a house. Later on, my brother-in-law had an affair, and the family was thrown into chaos. My cousin blamed us, saying that our suggestion to buy a house had put too much pressure on her husband, which led to his infidelity. When she came to visit our home, she drugged us, and while we were unconscious, she set a fire and burned our entire family to death. Thinking of this, a chill ran through my heart. Our family believes we have a clear conscience towards our cousin. Not only did I often work tirelessly for her, but we never asked for the money. We lent them for the down payment to be repaid, and we even helped them pay off their loans several times. In the end, this is the result we got. In this lifetime, we won't be offering any more advice. I'm curious to see if staying in a hotel will turn out to be a better choice. I was chatting with my dad when my mom walked in through the door. Her face was full of worry, and she spoke the same words she had in my previous life. Buchow's family doesn't seem poor, but he's unwilling to pay for the wedding house. Is he afraid it'll be shared with Jiayan? I quickly interrupted. Mom, don't say that. If sister chose brother-in-law, he must have his good points. Let's not worry about them unnecessarily. Don't they say that children and grandchildren will have their own blessings? I then turned to persuade my dad. Dad, didn't you say that young people nowadays have their own ideas? Giving too much advice might actually harm them. Although housing prices are rising now, there are so many people predicting a drop. What if they really fall? We wouldn't want them blaming us then. My mom listened and thought it made sense. Indeed, Buchow's family might really have some difficulties. We'd better not get involved. With my mom saying that, my dad didn't want to cause any more trouble either. Once we stepped outside, I looked troubled and said to my cousin, Cousin, we're not sure if we should buy a house. Who would have thought that my cousin would get angry right away, cutting me off? What's the use of you having such high education? You don't understand anything. Cousin, no matter how capable we are, we can't predict the future. How would we know what's better for you? You should think it over yourselves. Anyway, suggesting you buy a house isn't good for our family at all. I rolled my eyes inwardly. Fine, I'm leaving then, my cousin said, giving us a dark look before turning to go, not forgetting to take her red paper bag with her. Under the light, the red paper bag reflected a glimmer of red, just like the red flames I saw before I died. It suddenly dawned on me, my cousin's visit this time was never about sincerely asking for advice. Clearly, they're here to set a trap for us. Whether we say staying in a hotel is better or buying a house is better, they can blame us for anything that happens in the future, making us handle their problems and take advantage of us. Why didn't I figure this out in my past life? Luckily, I was quick-witted just now and didn't give her any answer. Not long after, my cousin posted a set of photos of a hotel suite on her social media feed, with the caption, "It really lives up to being a hotel suite. So spacious, much better than paying to stay in that cramped rental." My husband is both smart and considerate. He said staying in a hotel means someone else takes care of the cleaning, so I don't have to work hard. He specially rented a hotel suite for us to stay in. Looking closely, the room was indeed quite large, 2 bedrooms and a living room. It just doesn't look very clean, and there's a yellow, dried stain on a wall in the corner of the photo. no idea what caused it. A quick check of the location shows it's a budget hotel not far away. The hygiene isn't great, but the price is cheap. Besides, being a hotel, the facilities aren't that complete. There's no kitchen or washing machine. Someone asked below, how do you cook without a kitchen? How do you do laundry without a washing machine? My cousin fired back one by one. Seriously, there are still people who cook for themselves these days. Don't you know hotels have restaurants? Since we're long-term tenants, the hotel provides us with 3 free meals a day, delivered right to our room. What's wrong with the ingredients? Everyone eats them, so what's the issue? I think you've just been brainwashed by the internet. The hotel has a public washing machine, just take it there to wash. What do you mean it's not clean? People who can afford to stay in hotels aren't unclean. You're all so picky. Why don't you cook and deliver the food to me? Why don't you come and do my laundry for me? The group fell silent, afraid she might latch onto them. In my previous life, I was pretty much taken advantage of by my cousin in a similar way. My cousin's husband bought a house in the suburbs, where there weren't many supermarkets nearby. After I took pity on my cousin and delivered some things to her once, she started asking me to buy and bring her stuff from time to time, and she never paid me back. Since my kindness was taken for granted, let her keep digging her own grave. Time flew by in the blink of an eye. My nephew was born. My cousin invited us to attend my nephew's 1-month celebration banquet. The banquet was held at the budget hotel where they first stayed. According to my cousin's social media posts, over the past 6 months, she had switched hotels several times but eventually returned to the original one. She said it was still the most comfortable place to stay. From what I understand, it seems my cousin and her husband have been blacklisted by several hotels because they are notoriously messy and high maintenance. They would litter everywhere, leaving oil stains all over the tables and floors, and on a whim, they would demand that housekeeping come to clean immediately. Sometimes, when housekeeping did arrive, they would claim that the cleaning disturbed their rest and demand compensation from the hotel. Only the owner of the first hotel, who had too few customers, tolerated their behavior. Upon entering the hotel, the first thing that hit me was a strong scent of incense, followed by the musty odor and stench of urine it tried to mask. I wrinkled my nose in disgust, thinking to myself, the hygiene at this hotel really isn't up to par. At the dining table, faced with a spread that, while abundant, was clearly made up of prepackaged meals and fast food, I couldn't bring myself to pick up my chopsticks. Take a look, isn't my son adorable? My cousin said, walking over with her baby in her arms. A relative of my desk mate who works as a maternity nurse stood up and took the nephew. So adorable, let me hold him for a bit. After handing the child over, my cousin walked straight up to me, her tone dripping with smugness. Cousin, I heard you bought a house. Seems like all that studying didn't do you much good. Good thing you didn't advise us to buy one, otherwise we'd be like you, working from dawn till dusk to pay off the mortgage, with no time for a child. Look at you, so busy you can't even find a boyfriend. The month after my cousin asked for advice, I bought a house. After being reborn, I realized that the day our family died was not only because my cousin set the fire, but also because the house was too old. On the day my cousin set the fire, I had a poor appetite and ate very little. When the fire broke out, I quickly woke up from my coma. Just as I was about to go out to call for help, I was knocked unconscious by the unstable, burning wall. This apartment was bought when my parents got married, and we've lived here for over 20 years now. It's about time we changed to a new one. Following my suggestion, my parents used their savings to pay the down payment for a new apartment, while I took responsibility for repaying the mortgage. With the experience of being reborn, I made several crucial and correct decisions at the company, getting promoted twice within a year. The mortgage didn't put much pressure on me. Just to keep my distance from my cousin's family, whenever they contacted me, I often made excuses that I was busy with work. Maybe you should just sell the new house and stay in a hotel with me instead. Look how comfortable we are. Jiayan, what's on your son's body? A sudden exclamation cut off my cousin's next words. I thought the baby looked uncomfortable, maybe from the heat. So I opened the swaddling cloth and saw he was covered in red rashes all over. My sharp eyes caught sight of my cousin's son covered in dense red spots starting from his neck. The newborn's fair skin made them stand out starkly, sending a chill down my spine. My cousin snatched her nephew from the relative's arms and scolded, I let you hold him because you're family. How could you make my son sick? How could it possibly be my fault? It must be you, the mother, not paying attention, causing the baby's skin infection. I even explained in the group chat that newborns have sensitive skin and need careful care, and I mentioned that hotel hygiene might not be suitable for infants. What did you say? You said, mind your own business, I know how to take care of my own child. The relative was no pushover either and immediately fired back. The commotion quickly drew the attention of many people. Slap, a fierce-looking, stout woman rushed up to my cousin and slapped her across the face, then snatched my nephew from her arms. Even as a mother, you're still this lazy. Look what you've done to my precious grandson. It seemed this woman was my cousin's mother-in-law. No wonder my cousin had never mentioned living with her husband's family. It seemed she wasn't well liked in their household. After a chaotic scramble, my nephew was rushed to the hospital, and the banquet could no longer continue. The nephew's condition is complicated, not only diagnosed with allergic dermatitis but also showing signs of malnutrition. The doctor inferred it was caused by chemical products and fungal infections. The cousin and her husband are lazy, using only the bed sheets, duvet covers, and towels provided by the hotel, which have been used by who knows how many people. Additionally, the hotel's bed sheets, duvet covers, and bath towels are sent to a laundry facility, which typically uses strong chemical detergents. With the baby's skin being delicate, it quickly developed an allergic reaction. My cousin's family made a scene at the hotel, demanding compensation for medical expenses. To keep the peace, the hotel paid the medical fees and arranged for their son to receive treatment. However, because the child's skin condition had persisted for some time, the treatment came too late. During the process, they had to use some hormonal and anti-allergy medications. This could lead to future side effects such as weakened immunity or sluggishness, and dark patches have already appeared on his skin. My cousin and her husband also demanded that the hotel pay for medical checkups for both of them. Sure enough, fungal infections were found on various parts of their bodies. The couple quickly moved out of the hotel and went to live with the husband's parents, but given how fierce my cousin's mother-in-law was that day, I doubt my cousin will be able to stay there for long. Sure enough, just a few days later, my cousin called and asked me to help her find a rental, even inquiring whether I thought she should buy a house. I didn't dare get involved in her affairs again. I made an excuse about being busy with work and quickly hung up the phone. My mom told me that my aunt also came to ask for her advice. Fortunately, over the past 6 months, I've been constantly brainwashing my parents, telling them stories about people who advised others to buy property and ended up causing suicides, or those who were resented for giving such advice. I've exaggerated all sorts of social news about persuading people to buy houses and shared them with my parents, so now they don't dare give any advice about buying property at all. Even without our advice, my cousin's attitude toward buying a house is completely different from what it was 6 months ago. 6 months ago, she kept hinting that staying in a hotel was better, but now she's unusually determined to buy a house. She even pressured relatives in the family group chat to help persuade her husband to buy one, but for some reason, her husband absolutely refuses to do so. I guess it's because they were already married and had a child. My cousin had no choice but to compromise and move out to rent a place with her husband. It was just that when I saw the address of the rented apartment she posted in the family group chat, it looked all too familiar. Wasn't this address the same as the apartment they bought in my previous life? The unit and door number were exactly the same. What a coincidence in the world. My cousin came to visit again with gifts 6 years later. Compared to her previous life, my cousin at this time seemed to have aged even more. In her previous life, my cousin said that due to the pressure of repaying her mortgage, she had no choice but to go out and find a job. Her in-laws were out playing mahjong all day and had no time to look after the child, while her own parents were busy taking care of her cousin's kids. She had no choice but to work while taking care of her own child, constantly overwhelmed and looking noticeably more haggard. Using that as an excuse, she asked me to pick up her nephew and even cook for them, essentially acting as their part-time nanny. Looking at it now, the pressure of not buying a house in this lifetime is no small matter either. Cousin, why do you look so worn out? Is the pressure of renting that heavy? I couldn't help but mock. Normally, my cousin would have already jumped at me for saying that, but today she held back. She said pitifully, "Ah, cousin, you don't know. Even though the house was rented to us by a relative of Butchow's family, and the rent isn't much, raising a child costs money, kindergarten, food, clothes, it all adds up, and Wang Hao, ever since that incident when he was little, has had lingering health issues. He needs to take a lot of traditional Chinese medicine every month to recover, and that's more money. We also have to save up for Wang Hao to get married when he grows up. Ah, it's so hard." Seeing that we didn't respond, my cousin forced a smile onto her face. "Uncle, aunt, cousin, Wang Hao is about to start elementary school. We want him to attend the first primary school. the one that corresponds to the school district of your old house. You're not living in the old house now anyway. Could you help us transfer the ownership of the old house to us? It's just for Wang Hao's schooling, nothing else. Once Wang Hao finishes his studies, we'll return the house to you." I was stunned by my cousin's words. I had long anticipated my cousin's visit, because in my previous life, she also came at this time to ask our family for a school placement. I just didn't expect that in this life, my cousin's ambitions would be even greater. Our city had already implemented the policy of equal rights for renting and buying, meaning that renting a home in a school district also granted access to the school placement. So, in my previous life, my cousin had asked us to sign a rental contract with her so that she could use the school placement, and she would pay 1,000 yuan in rent as compensation each year. But in our previous life, we had already formally rented the house to my parents' benefactor, and the school spot had been allocated to them, so it couldn't be used for my cousin anymore. At that time, we even tried to negotiate a cheaper price with the neighbor to rent the house to my cousin so she could use the school spot, but my cousin still thought it was too expensive. Later, as the negotiations dragged on and we went to handle the procedures, it was already too late. My cousin had no choice but to enroll her nephew in a random elementary school. Because of this, my cousin has held a grudge against us ever since. This time, my cousin didn't even mention renting. She directly asked us to transfer the house ownership to her. It seems that after failing to pressure her husband into buying a house, she's now set her sights on ours. Doesn't the house you're renting also come with a school district? Buchao's relatives are using it themselves, and the third elementary school in that district is nowhere near as good as the first elementary school. Don't you want your nephew to receive a better education? But we've already rented the house out to someone else, and they're using the school spot. This time around, we also rented the old house to our benefactor. The difference is, since I bought a new home and moved my parents in with me, our benefactor now lives in the old house, making it much more convenient for them to drop off and pick up their child. My parents originally wanted to sell the old house, but I knew the price would go up in a few years, so I told them to hold off. Besides, I'm not short on money these days. Over the past 6 years, without having to worry about my cousin's affairs, my career has been smooth sailing. I'm almost the second in command at the company now. I've already paid off the mortgage on the new house ahead of schedule, and lately, I've been thinking about buying another one for my parents to live in. How could you rent it out to someone else? Don't you know there's still a nephew in the family? My cousin fumed angrily. That's not just someone else, he's my dad's benefactor. Without him, my dad wouldn't have become a professor. I said deliberately. So what? He's still an outsider, not as important as us. Hurry up and make them move out. Rent it to us, my cousin said thoughtlessly. My dad got angry. Su Jiayan, our family has always treated yours well, so why do you keep trying to take advantage of us? Helping you is a favor, not an obligation. You're not welcome here. Get out. My cousin was driven out by my father. A few days later, she started showing up at our doorstep every day, carrying gifts and begging for my father's forgiveness. My father's heart softened, and after she persisted for several days, he finally let her in to sit down. She hadn't been sitting there listening to my dad's lecture for more than a few minutes before she revealed her true intentions. Uncle, I was wrong that day. It was right for you to prioritize renting the house to your benefactor, but in 6 years, Wang Hao will be starting middle school and will need a school district. How about you transfer the house to me now, so you won't have to trouble yourselves later? What a perfect example of planning ahead. Except she wasn't the one doing the planning. She wanted us to do it for her. I couldn't help but laugh in frustration. Cousin, you could have bought your own house in these 6 years. If you think buying a house is too stressful, then just rent a better school district apartment. Good school district apartments are very expensive to rent. We need to save money for Wang Hao's future wedding. Let Wang Hao focus on his studies first, find a good job later, and save up for his own wedding. Wouldn't that be better? You've already bought a new house. What's wrong with giving us the old one? My cousin yelled out, seeing the disbelief in my parents' eyes. My cousin threw caution to the wind and cried out with a sob in her voice, "My life is so hard right now. Can't you just help me?" My father looked at this niece he had watched grow up, fell silent for a moment, and then spoke earnestly. "You and Buchao have hands and feet. You can work hard to earn money and support the family yourselves. The house is definitely not going to you, and I can't guarantee a middle school spot either. If my benefactor's grandson still needs a middle school spot, I'll continue renting the house to them." In life, when someone shows you a drop of kindness, you should know how to repay it with a spring of gratitude. You are truly heartless. my cousin stubbornly insisted. With that, she stormed off, angrily carrying the gifts away. Xiaoyu, Jiayan took Xiaohao to the A District People's Hospital for a checkup, and now we can't reach them. It seems like they got into an argument with someone. Isn't your company nearby? Could you go over and check on them? Several months had passed, and as I was getting ready to leave work, my mom called me. My nephew had a fever at school, so my cousin went to pick him up and take him to the hospital, but they hadn't returned for quite some time. My aunt tried calling my cousin but couldn't get through. She managed to reach my nephew on his children's smartwatch, but due to medication he took as a child, his reactions are slow, and he still struggles to speak clearly. All he could convey was that my cousin seemed to have gotten into an argument with someone. It was the peak hour for getting off work, and it would take them a while to get there. Thinking I was nearby, they asked me to go check on the situation first. I really don't want to get involved with my cousin's affairs anymore, but my mother pleaded with me desperately. Jia Yan's immaturity is her own problem, but your aunt has always treated you well. Please, just help her out this once. I still took some time off from work and rushed over. Just as I reached the entrance of the outpatient clinic, I heard my cousin's furious shout. Wang Buchao, you better explain clearly. Who is that woman behind you? You dare to protect her? Do you believe I'll kill both of you? My cousin was holding a fruit knife, pointing it directly at her husband, who was shielding a woman behind him. The woman's belly was slightly swollen, likely around 4 or 5 months pregnant. Big sister, what's going on here? I asked the woman beside me. You've come to the right person. I've been watching for almost half an hour, pretty much from start to finish. When my cousin was paying the fees, she saw her husband coming from the obstetrics and gynecology department with a woman. She immediately took her nephew and went up to confront her husband, demanding to know who the woman was. The husband claimed she was his cousin, but my cousin didn't believe him, saying she had never seen her at any of their family gatherings. However, the husband insisted she was just his cousin. My cousin asked her husband to have the woman's boyfriend come over, but no one showed up for a long time. Then, perhaps the baby moved inside her, and the woman clutched her stomach, her face contorted in pain. The brother-in-law looked at her with deep concern, and the cousin immediately sensed something was wrong. She pulled a fruit knife from her bag, pointing it at the brother-in-law, forcing him to confess. At this moment, the brother-in-law was caught in a dilemma, neither able to admit nor deny, leaving both sides at a standstill. Jiayan, she really is my cousin. Why won't you believe me? Please put the knife down first and let my cousin go get checked. I'm begging you. My brother-in-law, flexible enough to bend or stretch, actually knelt right down in front of my cousin. My cousin's expression softened, and the security guard beside her swiftly stepped forward to snatch the knife from her hand. Seeing the threat was gone, the brother-in-law hurriedly stood up, helped the woman beside him to her feet, and rushed toward the obstetrics and gynecology department. My cousin collapsed to the floor, burying her face in her hands as she wept bitterly. My cousin was escorted to the police station by security. Seeing that my cousin was fine, I sent a message to my mom to let her know everything was okay. Then, I planned to slip away quietly, but my sharp-eyed cousin spotted me, so I had no choice but to accompany her. At the police station, my cousin kept crying about her grievances, insisting that the woman must be my brother-in-law's mistress. I've been suspecting him for a while now, coming home so late every day, always saying he's busy with overtime, but I don't see how he could be earning much from all that overtime. My brother-in-law earns 15,000 a month, 6,000 goes to rent, 4,000 to his parents, and the remaining 5,000 is for my cousin's household expenses. My cousin isn't highly educated and only makes about 5,000 a month. Their son's medication costs 1,000 each month, and miscellaneous household expenses add up to another 3 or 4,000. After setting aside 5,000 for their son's tuition, there's hardly anything left. It's been quite tough. I was left speechless, even feeling a bit sorry for my enemy from my past life. Cousin, seeing how pitiful I am, why don't you ask aunt and uncle to give me the old house? My cousin turned to me and said. I quickly wiped the look of pity off my face. Every pitiful person has their own share of blame. My brother-in-law hurried over. Seeing my cousin's disheveled state, he frankly admitted, let me be straight with you, she is indeed my mistress, and the child in her belly is mine. My cousin screamed and tried to rush over to hit him, but the police held her back. Divorce, divorce, I want a divorce. Fine, let's divorce. I've wanted to for a long time. Ugly, old, and gave birth to a fool. My brother-in-law glanced at my nephew, his eyes filled with disdain. My nephew had been wearing a blank expression since leaving the hospital, neither crying nor making a fuss. I initially thought he was being well behaved, but now it Seemed he might genuinely have some intellectual issues. Don't you share responsibility for Xiaohao's condition? Wasn't it your idea to stay at that hotel in the first place? My cousin grew even more agitated. My brother-in-law continued, after all, I was the one who cheated. I'll give you all the family assets, and you can have our son too. I'll leave with nothing, okay? My brother-in-law looked down at my cousin, his face wearing an expression that said she should be grateful. At that moment, my uncle rushed in. It was unclear how much he had overheard, but he immediately threw a punch at my brother-in-law. Fine, let's get divorced. The next day, my cousin and her husband filed for divorce. My cousin received 100,000 yuan. The entire family's assets added up to just 100,000 yuan. The husband's car was bought by his parents, so it didn't count as joint property. No wonder my brother-in-law didn't care about that money at all. Yesterday, I saw my cousin again half a year later. She came to our house with gifts once more, but strangely, this time she didn't make any requests or ask any questions. Instead, she chatted with my father like a sensible junior, talking about everyday things. My cousin looked even more aged. After divorcing her husband, I heard she took it very hard. She quit her job and went back to live with my aunt and uncle, doing nothing all day. Her son was left for my aunt and uncle to take care of. She seemed somewhat depressed. A month ago, she started going out again, but after going out, she became even more depressed. This time she came to our house because my aunt suggested she get out more and see people. Watching my cousin's quiet demeanor, I always have an ominous premonition. I kept my eyes fixed on my cousin. My cousin asked what ingredients we had at home, saying she could help with the cooking. Her calm expression at this moment overlapped with the look on her face before she set the fire in my previous life. My parents readily agreed, and as my cousin headed to the kitchen, I returned to my room and turned on the kitchen surveillance. When we were renovating the new house, the lingering fear from my past life prompted me to install a camera in the kitchen. Just as my cousin pulled a packet of white powder from her pocket and began pouring it into the pot, I rushed over and grabbed her hand. Su Jiayan, what did you put in there? My cousin looked flustered. I bought ginseng powder to add in and give you a nutritional boost. Then let's go get it tested. If you poisoned us, you'll be going to jail. I didn't poison you. It was just regular sleeping pills. Why would you put sleeping pills in there? My cousin remained silent. You wanted to burn us all to death while we were unconscious, didn't you? I continued. Yes, I did want to burn you all to death. So what? It's all your fault, all because you didn't advise me to buy a house back then, and now I have nothing. Exposed. My cousin flew into a rage. Then, with a sudden burst of strength, she broke free from my grip, grabbed a nearby kitchen knife, and swung it at me. My father, hearing the commotion, rushed over and blocked the blow with his hand. Watching the blood flow from my father's arm, my eyes turned red, and I kicked my cousin hard. My cousin's head hit the back of the stove and she passed out. I told my mother to take my father to the hospital immediately, while I called the police and stayed to watch over my cousin. I submitted the kitchen surveillance footage, and with solid evidence, my cousin was detained for intentional assault. When asked about her motives, she revealed, a month ago, she went out to the front of her former rental apartment, where she overheard her brother-in-law and his new wife flirting and laughing. Honey, I've given you a son. When will you put the house in my name? We'll register it tomorrow. Your ex-wife is so pitiful. She doesn't even know this house is yours. You can't be so cruel to me, can you? Of course I won't treat you like that. I never loved my ex-wife anyway. If she hadn't gotten pregnant back then, I wouldn't have even wanted to marry her. She was easy to fool too. I told her living in a hotel was better, so she just stayed in a hotel. My cousin spent some money to have someone investigate. It turned out that the rental apartment she was living in was actually bought by my brother-in-law's parents and registered under their names. They rented it to a relative, who then sublet it to them, so the rent they paid ultimately went back to my brother-in-law's parents to cover the mortgage. After their divorce, my brother-in-law's parents transferred the house to him. My brother-in-law played a clever hand, but my cousin ended up blaming us, asking why we hadn't advised her to buy a house back then. If we had, since she was pregnant at the time, my brother-in-law would surely have bought the house, and even after the divorce, she would have been entitled to half of it. After all the twists and turns, the blame still landed on us. Hearing my sister's reasoning, my parents were both angry and amused. My aunt and uncle knelt down, begging my father not to sue my cousin. My cousin wasn't very strong, and the wound on my father's arm wasn't too deep. After being stitched up, it would heal in a few weeks, though he wouldn't be able to use that arm for strenuous activities in the future. After some thought, my parents decided to forgive my cousin, but from that day on, the two families would cut ties and have No further contact. With that outcome, I breathed a sigh of relief. It was exactly the result I had hoped for, but looking at the bandage on my dad's hand, I hated my impulsiveness at that time. In order to get my cousin to express her thoughts, I provoked her, which led her to take a knife and try to attack someone. If I had been more tactful in my approach, my dad might not have been injured later. Because we forgave her, my cousin was released after being detained at the police station for a few days. One day, she went to the old rental house, which is now my brother-in-law's home. According to the surveillance footage, she pried the door open, went inside, and likely started a fire. For some reason, she never made it out. It was a weekday, and by the time the fire was discovered, 3 floors were already engulfed in flames. Fortunately, it was a weekday, so there weren't many people in the building. Only 2 victims. Quietly, that day, my brother-in-law's new wife had taken the child back to her parents' home, and my brother-in-law was off work due to illness. No one knew what had happened inside the house. After all, the 2 bodies were severely charred when they were discovered. After my cousin passed away, the heavy stone in my heart finally settled. One day, a subordinate looked at me, hesitating to speak. I asked, "What's wrong, Jade? I heard you're planning to buy your 3rd house." A relative asked me if they should buy a property, and I don't know how to respond. "You have so much experience with buying houses, do you think I should advise them to buy?" "It depends on the individual, unless absolutely necessary.